What's up, y'all? You're now listening to the What Now podcast. I'm Dr. Spencer Dupre, owner of Empower Chiropractic.
And I am Dr. Zach Thompson, owner of Within Chiropractic. The purpose of this podcast is to document and share the experiences of two young business owners as we open our own brick and mortar chiropractic practices. Join along as we discuss all of our wins, our losses, insights, and the many, many lessons we learned.
As a disclaimer, none of this is ever intended to be medical, legal, or financial advice. Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the What Now podcast, your place to learn from our mistakes and learn how to be a practice owner and entrepreneur. Thanks for being along with us. I'm back, Spencer, with Empower Chiropractic, and we got Zach again today. What's up, ZT?
What's up? Yes, we are joined today. Super excited for today's episode. We are joined by one of the biggest mentors for, I think, Spencer and I from afar. We have the former president of Delta Sigma Chi, Grand Council, Dr. Ankur Tayal, hopping on with us. Dr. Ankur, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited. Real quick for our listeners, maybe not necessarily elevator pitch, but also not Oppenheimer 3-hour documentary style. Give us a quick rundown history of yourself in chiropractic.
Oh, okay. Let's see. So 40 years old, well, 41, I guess. It just turned 41. Graduated in 2009, Life West. Practiced for 5 years in Victoria, British Columbia with one of my best friends in the world, Dr. Matthew Kittleson. And he's also one of our Delta Sigma Chi members. Then from there, I went back to Life West to teach. I became the chair of chiropractic philosophy and technique, which also ran the business courses, which I think is a foundation for our conversation today. So that'll be a lot of fun. While I was there, I got an MBA out of the University of Victoria, and I completed my ACP, the Academy of Chiropractic Philosophers. So that was a lot of fun. And that experience with those pieces of paper, I think, made me a desirable person to lead the Scotland College of Chiropractic. So I went to Scotland for a year or so. Didn't really work out to a mutual benefit, so I left, and now here we are.
Awesome. Well, we're super excited to learn from everything you have learned and experienced and gone through, especially being a mentor to so many students and now business owners and associates and things like that. So real quick, my first question is going right into it. What would you say from a mistake standpoint? We would like to talk about mistakes here, so that way we don't recreate them. But what would you say, 3 mistakes? What is the biggest mistake you see pre-business owners make? What is the biggest mistake you see someone in business for a year make? And then what is a mistake you see someone make around 3 to 5 years in?
Okay, good question. So the pre-business owner, I think, makes the mistake of not understanding what it takes to actually do it. I think that there's a couple of dynamics in our profession among students is some students come in very much entrepreneurial, ready to go, and they want to be business owners when they graduate, and that's great. Others have that idea, but they don't really have the ambition to discover the pieces of what to do, and others have no desire whatsoever. So if you're in the first category or the last category, I actually think they make fewer mistakes. If they have the ambition and they have the whatever it takes attitude, they will glean from their mentors and their teachers. Okay, I got to do this on my evenings and weekends, and I've got to develop this skill, or I've got to figure this out. That's wonderful. If I'm in the third category and I have zero desire whatsoever to be an entrepreneur, that means I'm looking for a job, and I know that, and I know what that means. We're talking salary, and we're talking 9 to 5, and I don't have control of my responsibilities, and that's okay. But I also don't have to be entrepreneurship, and that's what I desire. No big deal. It's that second category where people make a mistake. They actually want to open their own practice one day. They don't really think about it while they're in school, and then they realize when they get out, they don't have the tools nor the understanding necessary to actually do it. And what I'm specifically referring to, I think, is something that I think both of you guys are familiar with, which is that concept of the E-myth, where you have, if you're opening your own business, right? You have 3 personalities. One is an entrepreneur, an owner, one is a manager, and one is a technician. And sometimes that second category there, they don't understand all three categories.
Right. Right.
So what would be your advice to those people who kind of float in the middle, and these people who are like, well, I think that I would be good at owning a practice. I don't know everything to do. What direction would you point those people in, like, right now?
Right now, I would point them towards senior students that have that ambition, that have that category 1. I would point them to getting serious about the following things. How do they want to practice when they graduate? How long do they think it'll take before they want to open their practice? The answer is usually 18 months to 3 years. That's usually the answer. And if so, then what do I need to do to get there? I need to figure out who my preceptor is going to be. And that's what they call it at Life West. It might be a peak at Life. And I think it's like a PMO at Sherman. I don't know what you guys call it. What do you guys call it?
We call it a CBI. Community-based internship,
right? So most of the schools have an internship opportunity. Don't phone that one in. Use that as an opportunity to see what you don't know about running a business. You may learn how to adjust at school. You may learn chiropractic. I emphasize may. If you don't, then you should definitely learn that on your evenings and weekends.
Amen.
But you're less likely to learn business operations, and you're less likely to earn entrepreneurship. So the sad reality is you have to learn that on evenings and weekends. Go find a mentor in school. Go find a mentor in the field who can take you on, and volunteer. Just shadow them. Shadow. And I think that's my last piece of advice to answer this question is go visit as many offices as humanly possible, because you're going to learn what you like. You're going to learn what you don't like. And every single office that you visit is going to give you invaluable experience to get you into the entrepreneurial head.
That's awesome. One thing I know, and I'd like you to talk a little bit more on, but one lesson I remembered from taking a couple of your classes was the concept of going to other businesses like a tire shop or the barber shop and seeing how that experience is. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more on that exercise, if you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. So what you're talking about, Zach, is you're talking about when business owners designed an experience for their clients or their customers, or in our case, our patients, practice members, whatever you want to call it. And think back to your first chiropractic experience. How did you feel? How did you feel? Did you feel excited that you're going to a chiropractor? Maybe our listeners do, because like we're in the chiropractic field, but like, what about our friends, right? That we told to go see a chiropractor. Maybe they were a little hesitant. Maybe they were a little anxious. Maybe they felt a little vulnerable. And what I liken it to when I take my car in, because I don't know about cars, and the mechanic can smell it as soon as I pull in, like, and I know that. And so I feel a little vulnerable. I feel a little anxious. I don't know what this noise is that I'm bringing it in for, or what this light means. I wish I did, but I didn't. And as soon as I start talking to the mechanic, they realize that, and they have an opportunity now. They have an opportunity to take me for everything. They have an opportunity to lie to me and manipulate me, which some do, or they have an opportunity to really take care of me. To really understand my anxiousness, my vulnerability, to say, hey, I got you, man. I got you. I'm going to scoop you in, take you in my bosom, and I'm going to take care of your car, and you're going to have a great experience, and you're going to come out clean on the other side. And that's my mechanic. I discovered that after years and years of having the other experience where I don't know about what's going on in my car and et cetera. Sorry for that bump there. So when I found that mechanic, and I was an entrepreneur at the time, I was a young entrepreneur. I'm like, wow, this person is more than just a technician. This guy is more than just somebody who fixes cars. He understands customer service, and he understands business. And he would always and then give me a bill that had less than what he quoted me. And I would feel amazing about that. And he would ever call me in the middle of the day for that, saying, oh, we just got in there and it's a mess in here, and it's going to be this much more. Nobody likes that. Now, can you see how that's a metaphor to what we do in our office? How we want to design consciously and be consciously intentional about what they're feeling like when they first seek us out, when they look at our website, when they call us the first time, or they make an online appointment, when they walk into our door, when they meet you and they greet the CA, the office manager, when they greet you, what the history experience is like, what the exam is like, what it's like when you have the money conversation and you give them that piece of paper or whatever it is that you do, what your report of findings, what the first adjustment is. Hey, did you describe what we call in chiropractic philosophy the potential or the likelihood of the retrace? where you might re-experience old symptoms. You might get stiff sore, you might have emotions come up, you might have some old injuries come up, because if you did explain that with a piece of paper and some stories, then when that happens, they might not feel great, but they're going to really like you. But if you didn't explain that, and it happens all the time, then they're going to experience that. They're going to come back like, oh yeah, that's normal. Well, then you're an excuse maker and they hate you, even though that is actually normal. So just one of many, many things. There's so many steps. We're talking 50, 80 steps where you can go one by one and be consciously intentional on how you design the experience for you and your patient. And I just absolutely love that. And so you're right. The barbershop does that. The tire shop does that. The florist does that. We do it. And if we don't do it, we're missing an opportunity.
Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest opportunities that I talk to a lot of our peers about, is they don't design an experience first. They hang a shingle and they put their sign up, and then they say, come get adjusted. And then you come in and the experience is awful. The intake paperwork is confusing. They come in, you don't do a thorough history. You lay down on the table and you don't explain anything that's going to go on. You start jumping on them like a bag of chips that you see on the internet. And then people are like, oh man, then you over adjust them because you don't know how to check for primaries. And then they come back sore, and then people are so upset with you because then they retrace super hard, or you've over adjusted them. And then now they're more confused about chiropractic than they are. And so that's what I have made a point, and what I go back to your class all the time about is let us look at our experience. And it starts not just when they phone call us, it starts with what other people tell them about us and the word of mouth that goes around. Because if we have a bad reputation in our community, then these people are going to already perceive that we don't do great things. And so every time each step has to be so intentional and so inviting, and has to play on top of each other. And that's why we have an order. And, so yeah, I think that's super big. What do you feel like in that experience? What do you feel like is the most overlooked part?
I can think of a few off the top of my head. One is I love, my favorite part of that whole experience is the moment that the doctor, meets the patient.
Okay, expand on that a little bit. Why?
So here's what's already happened. They've already found out about us. They've already called in or booked in online or whatever. They've already driven to the office. They've already walked in, which is part of my favorite experience. That first time they walk in, I think that's actually the answer. When they walk in, what do they see? What do they feel? What do they hear? What do they smell? All five senses. What's the experience? I'm right now, I'm thinking about back to my practice, and there's this beautiful blue, and we had that puzzle piece on the wall where you have puzzles, and everybody writes down something cool about what happened in their patient experience, I can eat again, or my it feels like a valve opened in my head, or I think they're using Jedi magic. I'm just recalling my favorite ones that were written on the puzzle piece, and we tapestry them together, and it's on the wall, and it's the first thing that they see. So if they come in for a headache or a backache or something like that, which is pretty common, and they see the wall, and what does that say? I can eat again? What's that all about? And then that's an opportunity for us to explain what we're doing. And they see this tapestry of all sorts of things happening. And when you put it all together, now we understand that it's about function and it's not symptomology, and et cetera. We also had an open concept with a half wall, so they can hear people having experiences, and so that's what they heard. It's what they see. We had essential oils or whatever. So there's an odor to our brand, a scent, excuse me, not an odor. That's a bad word. A scent to our brand. We'd offer them water or tea or whatever. So there's a taste, et cetera. And so we want them to walk in and say, wow, 1, this place is different. 2, I'm in the right place. And then they do their paperwork if they haven't already. And shortly after, that's when I meet them. And the reason that I like that is because this is something that maybe people can use, is the difference between a script and a skeleton. This is something that I like to teach in scripting and in business coaching. I don't know if your listeners have business coaches, or if they're going to get business coaches or whatever. Back in the 80s and 90s, they wanted you they gave you a piece of paper and they made you memorize what to say. And they'd say something like, let me tell you what we're doing here, and I want you to work as hard as me. And if I accept your case, and I'm a real stickler for detail, and I want good, clear, concise answers and things like that. And it's yeah, good. I'd say I know the scripts, I know the lines, but I didn't say those. And you know why? Because they weren't authentic to me. But what I did was I took those lines and I'm like, okay, well, stickler, that's a funny word. And I wouldn't say that in a professional setting. I'd say that in a social setting because it's a funny word. But I do like the idea of, okay, we should talk about what we're going to do here, and we should talk about framing the experience. And so for me, my favorite part was when I got to meet a new patient, I'd say with kind eyes, I'd shake their hand, I'd say, welcome. I'd lead them back to the consultation room. I'd pull out the chair for them, whoever they were, male, female, old, young, whatever, gray, purple, black, white. And I'd help them with the chair, and I'd have the clipboard that they filled out. And I'd say, welcome. I've seen what you've written. I've seen what you've written, acknowledging that I know what they've done so far. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and I'm going to let you share why you're here. And as soon as I know whether or not I can help, I'll let you know.
Mm.
So simple. And those are my lines that I got to over time. But here's why I love that line. First priority, right? Connection and kindness, right? What I say, shake their hand with kind eyes. And then leadership, right? Let me take you, because they're here to be led. Let me take you to the consultation room with help, with the chair. Now acknowledgement. Hey, this is the key thing. I'm holding up the clipboard, readers or listeners. You can't see that. I'm holding up a clipboard and I'm pointing the clipboard. I see what you've written here, right? So I'm acknowledging why they're here, right? So we know what's going on. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and let you share with me. And now they're like, okay, I get to talk, sweet. And there's one objective that we all have. Can I help you? And I'm going to acknowledge that. As soon as I know whether I can help, I'm going to let you know. Boom. Now the tension is eased. We've got rapport. We like each other. It's not a gimmick, right? It's like, okay, we are in this. We're present. We're connected. Your turn, patient. Tell me what's up. And I will guide it with a history, and we go from there. Love that. Love that so much.
No, that's really, really good. And I think that, those two elements, right? You talked about the five senses when they walk in. What do they see? And it's a very different office. So they might even be a little more vulnerable or skittish because people think, oh, I'm going to a doctor's office. There's got to be this big glass window, and I got to go up and talk to the receptionist and fill out this long paperwork about my insurance. And then they probably get to your office, and that's not the case. And so, like, what's going on here? I know for us, like, we don't wear shoes. We're in socks, and so that already kind of breaks down the barrier there, and people are freaking out. Not freaking out, but like they're like, this is different, right? But then you go in and you have this very different, what they may think is not as professional, right? You have the puzzle pieces, those types of things. But then you go in and you're in doctor mode, and you're like, okay, like, I'm not necessarily taking control, but you are taking control and asserting that professionalism. And so that's something I know I'm going to be taking a look at, is how do I break that barrier, break the ice going into that consultation. That was super good.
That's great. And just add to that, like, I'm not suggesting that we're dominant and they're submissive. Right. Maybe that's what used to happen in the older days, but I am suggesting that they're looking for leadership, and they need us to lead to create a partnership in their health. Do
you mind expanding a little bit more on that, just for some of our listeners? Because I know that's something, especially in today's age as chiropractors, we very much don't want to come off assertive, but there does have to be that level of leadership, correct?
Yeah, I think if I could modify your statement, we don't want to come across as aggressive, which I think we used to do. There's passive, there's assertive, and there's aggressive. And assertive is like we're creating a team together. And I know you need a leader, because that's why you're coming into my office. And yes, I'm the leader, but I'm not dominant and you're submissive, right? And I'm not going to tell you what to do at all times. Like, the line used to be, if I take your case, I need to know that you're going to work as hard as me. And the line now is, if we decide, this is what's on our website, if we decide together that we're going to work together, we'll outline the whole care plan, the costs, and what it entails. You see the difference in that languaging? That goes from aggressive to assertive. And I'm still in charge, but I'm empowering you to be an almost equal member.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's big. That's like one of the things that I always make sure to say, like, is, and if we feel like this is the best place for you, or if we're the best fit for you, or if we're the best fit for your family, it's all those things. Because we always say, we want to make sure you're in the right place. Because if you're in the wrong place, we're going to let you know. Because, like, from a business standpoint, and from another thing that I've learned from you by going through the whole book yourself solid thing, is like, if you let all these not ideal people come in, it creates friction in your practice, whether you think so or not. And whenever you start up, and especially, like, I mean, we've all been in startup mode. Zach and I are more recent in that than you, but like, you get in this, like, oh, I just need anybody that walks through the door with a pulse to come in. But actually, actually what you do is you kind of shoot yourself in the foot by like accepting you're not ideal clients, because it actually sucks your energy away from you.
That's right. That's right. And that's why I love that word together. Like if we decide together that this is something that we want to do, then we'll move forward. And you know, we have a say in that, and you have a say in that. And that's important.
No, that's super good. Are there any other pieces in that process where you have more of a skeleton or a framework, not necessarily a script, and maybe some areas through a history taking or through a consultation or report of findings where you notice new docs really do struggle?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have those skeletons for everything. They've become scripts because I like my lines, but that's just so that I can be present in the moment, not so I can be a robot. But to answer your question specifically, yes, the report of findings. One is when we're going over the money, right? Because that's really important to know the program so well that I can maintain eye contact and compassionate eyes and not aggressive eyes, and be there for them. That's one part. And then the debrief. The debrief, when we talk about here's what to expect afterwards, the retracing stuff that we just alluded to. Same thing. I've got a piece of paper with some bullet points, and then I explain those. And this way, I know that everybody's getting the important pieces. I may or may not say the same thing every time, but I know they're getting the important pieces based on what they need for them.
Yeah, I think that those skeletons and having the paperwork, and I think one of the biggest things that that we see a lot in practice, and especially amongst our like early starting peers, or just in general, is that like people either one have no information on your paperwork, and it just is kind of like, will it, like whatever is up in the air, like whatever comes out, or you have too much and then you read it verbatim, like where you read it line by line. And I think the most important thing is like you should know your paperwork by the back of your hand. You should be able to close your eyes and read your paperwork. And then, so like for me, like our paperwork, we have all this stuff about retracing and the neuro detox and what to expect and all that. And I have like 3 bullet points. Like it takes time and repetition. There may be a detox, and all change is good. And those are like the 3 things that are highlighted. And I make sure that I point them because it gives people the gist, and it breaks it down. Because as like they're looking at the paper, well, they're inherently reading the things that I'm not saying because I'm pointing to them as like we're walking through it, right? One of my questions for you is, how do you feel that the customer experience changes from open bay adjusting to closed bay, like one single room, one table adjusting?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there's 2 considerations there, one doctor preference and one's patient preference. And again, leadership is important here, because if a patient's expecting a closed bay system and they come into an open bay situation where ours was like half open, you couldn't see it, but you could hear it and you knew it was going on. And that might be a little strange for people at first, but that's part of the design experience. It's part of the orientation. Hey, this is what we do. And, you know, they experience it while they're waiting. I do recommend that if a new patient is coming in, then if it's within the realm of possibility, schedule them at the end of an adjusting shift so that they can kind of get a glimpse of, you know, we had that goofy stuff. So we had a NUCA practice, and let's say that you're sitting in the waiting room, and every time I did a pull, that's what we call it for those that aren't familiar with NUCA, you do a little bit of work on the neck, and then you have them get up and you have them walk around, and we'd have them walk around right through the waiting area, touch the door, and come back. So a new patient is sitting there, and everyone else knows what's going on, but a new patient has no idea what's going on here. And so the CA obviously knows that dynamically. Yep, this is what we do here. This is what we do. So it's about designing that experience to ease them in and to, you know, give them touches, et cetera. You know, it's like if the patient prefers open and you're designed as closed, they probably won't really, you know, it probably won't really be that big of a deal. If it's vice versa, that could be strange for them. So that has to be worked into your system. If it's the other way around, you can work it into your system as well. But to your point, that's important. I had another thing. In upper cervical work, we have a no adjustment protocol, right? So you can come in to the office and get checked and not get adjusted, and we'll give you a high five, we'll charge you full fee, and then we'll send you on your way. And that can be very, very difficult for people to comprehend unless it was explained and systematized properly. So by the time that happens, that's the 3rd time they learn about the no adjustment protocol. The first visit they hear about it, that's the goal. The second visit they're reminded about it. Yep, we still charge a full fee, but it's a good thing. The third visit, we celebrate it. Or the third time we talk about it is the first time that it actually happens. And now it's time for a celebration. So if we didn't have the first and two parts of the conversation, and the first time that they realized that a no adjustment was a quote unquote good thing, and that they'd be livid, and that's when they leave. So just another example of that.
Yeah, I bring up the open bay, closed bay thing because currently I'm in a really small office, which I definitely should have gotten, but it was the only office I can get. Anyway, and I have one room with one table, but I keep the door open so you can kind of hear everything that's going on because I want it to be open. And now I'm moving into a new space where I'll have space for a second table. Like, what's your advice in the transition between that? Because like I want to move to open bay adjusting, but I've only ever had one table in the office.
Do you know what the space will look like yet?
Yeah, I have it like fully designed and everything.
Oh,
I've
great.
sat down with an interior designer and like we've done a flow layout and all that stuff.
Do you have a front desk?
Yep.
So throw up a sign on your front desk with a picture of the design and say we're moving, and highlight in a certain way the open bay, and then make references, just casual reference to the fact that we're moving. Not the open bay stuff, but we're moving. And then if they have a question, they'll be able to ask about it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been like, well, that's good. That actually brings me a lot of reassurance because I've just been saying like we're moving to a bigger office, so more tables. That's kind of what I say. Like we can just see more people. We have more space for tables. That's kind of just what I say. And so then whenever they walk in, they'll be like, oh, this is what he means by there's more space for tables. So that's cool.
Exactly. And that should be fine. And if you're in a place right now where they can say something about it, and like, is that going to be open or whatever, and then you can address it, you might lose a very, very small fraction, but I doubt it. I highly doubt it.
So
Nice.
going back to that initial question, what, we kind of talked about the pre-framing and the frameworks going into opening the business and kind of now having your systems down. Once someone does have their systems at least somewhat dialed in, I know they're constantly evolving as they should be. What would you say is that big mistake that you see a 1 to 3 year doc make that really blunders or stops them in their tracks?
3 words: management by statistics. They're not tracking their numbers, so they don't know what their deficiencies are. What gets measured gets managed. And like
I say that line all the time.
What gets measured gets managed.
Yes.
If you don't know the number, it's very much more difficult to know what the deficiencies are. And we're talking PVA, we're talking OVA. How many new patients did you see? How many office visits did you do? How much did you collect? Those basic 5 at least. And then look at conversions, look at kept appointment percentages, look at all of the things that would make for leaky buckets. All right. And pun intended, patch that up so that you're not leaking and therefore you're growing way faster than you would otherwise.
Yeah, no, that's super good. I was on a coaching call last night, and the guy had mentioned, finding your lifetime value by multiplying PVA times OVA. And I'd always thought like our lifetime value was 1,500 or so. And then he's like, go back to the last 6 months, calculate the numbers. And I was like, holy smokes, like we're not close to 1,500. I gotta sit back down and go back through these things because I wasn't tracking that statistic. Right. I knew the conversion, I knew the office visit, I knew the PVA, those types of things, but I didn't know the lifetime value, and it like really struck me. And I'm like, okay, now if I don't do anything, this has a chance to probably decrease in the next 6 months, or I can address this now and make a big change. Because I was looking more at from a marketing standpoint and trying to figure out, okay, how much can we truly spend on our marketing campaigns and those types of things. But what are some numbers? I know you mentioned conversions as well as kept appointments. How often should someone be looking at their numbers?
All the time, man, all the time. Now that's just me because I'm a nut. But let me tone it back. Let me dial it down. Right, at the very least, you need to know all of your monthly numbers. Okay, what was my PVA this month? How many new patients did I see? How many total visits? Total visits you should know by week. You multiply that by, or you track that by week and by month. So you need to know your PVA and your OVA every month. You need to know new patients, visits, and collections every month. And if you have a CA or an office manager, they should be reporting those 5 metrics to you every week, or at least the ones that they're tracking. And you can calculate the other 2. The ones you calculate are PVA and OVA. The ones you track are new patients, visits, and collections. So your manager should be sending that to you every week. If you don't have a manager, that means you should be doing it every week. If you don't have a manager, you should actually be doing it every day, because you should be reconciling how much you collected with how much you expected to collect. And if there's any deficiency, you need to address that. That's the job of the office manager or the CA. Then they should be reporting you the statistics every week. And if you don't have that, then you do it. And then you should look at them every week, and you should definitely look at them every month. And you should have a meeting with all your team. If you're a team of 1, you should be looking at your metrics every month and saying, okay, our OVA is down. Our OVA means how much we collect per visit. Why is that? Is it because we're discounting more than we realize? Is it because we're not collecting? Is it because somebody's stealing from me? Is it because insurance is backed up? I need to figure out why my average collection per visit is lower than I thought it was. Otherwise, that's a leaky bucket. If I multiply that by my PVA, which is also lower than I thought it was going to be, what's my PVA? It's how many times somebody is in here for the duration of their care. I thought my PVA was 24, but it's actually 18. Oh, shoot. Well, I thought my OVA was 50, but it's actually 42. If I'm down, let's say 40, right? If I'm down 20%, 50 is what I should be getting, and 40 is what I am collecting, then it's 20% down. If I thought my PVA was 24, but it's actually 18, then that's 25% down. 20% down here, 25% down here. Now, all of a sudden, my collections are significantly down, and that's what Zach is talking about. I need to now put my energy not into marketing, not into new patients. My new patients are fine. I need to convert them, and I need to collect when they actually show up. I don't need to spin my wheels on more marketing, which is new patient acquisition, as I need to more tighten up my collections and tighten up my education so that they actually stay and do the recommendations that will give them the best results.
Yeah. I think that's huge, like, especially whenever you're tracking your OVA and looking at it, because when, like, at least for me, like in a new practice, you just want people to get in to have your experience so they can start telling other people about it. And so you discount care so much at the time. And then you're like, man, I'm doing all this work and I'm trying to see all these people and I got no money in the bank. And then you look at your OVA and it's like, well, and then once you calculate your stop loss, saying like, okay, it cost me this much to adjust people. And I think that's like one of the biggest things that we don't look at is it actually costs you to have somebody lay on the table for like your rent, your payroll, your technology fee, all of your overhead, right, is divided up by how many hours or how many visits you have available. And so you should be making X amount of dollars per visit. And like for me, my OVA, like when I first started, because I was discounting care so much, was like $32. Well, my stop loss was like $28. So I was profiting $2 per visit. And like I might as well shake a can on the side of the road, like to make $2. Right. So that's tough. And so by tracking your stats, you increase your profitability. Now our OVA is like up toward like 65. And I'm like, oh man, like this is awesome. Like, and now I can actually scale and provide a better experience because I'm more profitable. And that is the biggest, like, we always want to discount our care because we're like, oh, we should help these people. We should help these people. Well, they need to help you help them by paying what it's worth.
Totally. And let's just hammer that point home, because the new grad, to answer your question, Zach, does not often understand this, right? Let's say it's a $50 office visit, pretty typical, right? And you're like, well, what's Spencer's point there? How much does it actually cost for me to be in business? Well, let's take a step back and let's just measure. Let's say that we made, let's do easy numbers. We collected $30,000 last month. We collected $30,000 and our overhead was $15,000 with our rent, our staff, our this, our that, and that. That means we had 50% overhead. Okay. Let's just park that number. If we go back to our $50 office visit, well, I want to discount $10. Okay, well, let's think about that, because in a $50 visit, 50% is overhead. So I have to spend $25 just to be in business, and I make $25 off that person. So now when I think that I'm giving them a $10 discount, right? That's a 20% discount. I'm actually getting 10 out of 25 discount from what I actually make. 10 out of 25, that's 40%. Can I really afford a $10 discount? Maybe, maybe not. But the question is, did we actually think about that?
Yeah. And if you don't measure it, then you can't manage it. And then that's whenever you have all these holes in your bucket and you're shooting yourself in the foot, and then your practice crawls forward because you have no money to reinvest into your scale. Like,
right.
I mean, yeah, like if you make $2 an adjustment or $10 an adjustment, but it costs you $3,000 to have an employee where you can then now see 4 times the people and then make more money, like it's going to take you 6 years to actually be able to afford that. And then you
Right.
pay, then you have to pay your employee like crap, and then they don't stay. And so you hire lower quality talent. And so then your overall experience is worse. That's a big lesson that I learned like in my first 6 months is like once I stopped discounting as much, or really stopped discounting at all and raise my prices, that's when my practice started growing. I started getting better results because I had more energy from that profit.
Right on. And the one last point that I'll make that'll just circle right back. We're talking about the new patient thing, spinning that wheel. But if your OVA sucks and your PVA sucks, or is lower, that means your experience sucks.
Yep.
And that's what we have to get back to, so that, you know, what's the point of bringing new people in for a crummy experience?
Amen.
I know sometimes it could be a little dicey talking numbers like OVA because we don't, always different practices and things like that. But what would you say is a good OVA in regards to? I know it might be different in upper cervical office versus full spine, that type of thing. But from what you've seen,
Yeah, I it's a tough one. Like I can't give you a number, right? I'll say go to your community and see what the average is, and play that game. I'm not a huge advocate of being in the average, right?
Yeah.
Go low and high volume for affordability, or go high fee and do really good work and find some way to differentiate yourself. Same question for PVA, because technique dictates different models, and CBP versus upper cervical versus Gonstead versus tonal, but you should know what your ideal PVA is. The doctor should know based on the technique that they do, the experience they provide, the science that backs up the results that they get. They should know what their ideal PVA is, and they should strive for that. They will have people that come in once and never come back. They will have people that have been under care for forever and ever and ever, and that should bring the PVA up over years. But the doctor should know. As far as OVA, this is my bias, but I like to tell my people to raise their fees. I like to tell them to go high, because I like to tell them to go high, because if they follow my advice, which is providing an experience and providing value and being a good communicator and being an excellent chiropractor and doing all the things right, then they deserve to have a fee that is commensurate, and that'll probably reflect their ideal patient. And if their ideal patient can't afford a high fee, they can still design an experience to get lots and lots and lots of their ideal patient to combat that. But I just don't see that happening a lot or as much with an average fee.
Super good.
I think they get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Average
That's
fee.
very true. Okay, so then since we're like talking about all these like systems and nitty-gritty things, it gets like really overwhelming when you're like, man, I have to develop all these systems. I have to develop all these systems. And the one thing that I really liked about your class is that you broke it down really into 4 main chapters. You saw like the 4 pillars of business, which I would love for you to kind of dive into. Like, what are your big 4 buckets for your business that you need to focus on?
Right on. Yeah, cool. And this kind of goes back to that E-Myth stuff, right? Which is like, that's a mistake that people will make if they're in school. If they don't read the E-Myth, that's a mistake, because pretty much everything we're talking about here comes out from the foundational text that I teach out of, which is the E-Myth Revisited. But I think what you're referring to, just correct me if I'm wrong, is finance, operations, marketing. Yeah.
Marketing and human resources.
And human resources. Well, I did that fast. Let me slow that down. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. The big 4 in business are operations, finance, marketing, and human resources. So you can see how those are important categories. They're very different. And if we get a handle on all 4 of them, then we're in a pretty good place. Operations, how does the building go? How does the patient flow come in and out? What equipment do you need? What's your rent? What's the HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning look like? Do you have x-rays? Do you have equipment, etc.? How does your practice operate? Which is different than the marketing, of course, which is how to get people in, how to communicate, how to maintain relationships. What does your brand look like? What do they feel when they think about you? different than operations. Different than operations and marketing is finance, which is as obvious as it gets. That's the money, expenses, revenues, banking, incorporation, taxes. Some of that just might not appeal to you at all. Well, you know what? If you want to be an entrepreneur, tough. You have to develop or delegate it. Develop or delegate it. You don't have to do it, but you have to understand it. You have to understand, you have to know what to do and either do it or find somebody to do it. If you're the only one in your practice, you're all of these: your operations, your marketing, your finance, and your human resources. If you're the only one, then you're doing all of the you're doing the management. You're doing the cleaning. You're doing the networking. You're shaking the hands. You're kissing the babies. You're doing the adjusting. You're doing the doctoring. All that stuff, and then eventually you'll plug people in to various roles. And it's imperative that we understand all four of those aspects. And I think that, to your point, Spencer, will help you develop systems for each one.
Yep. Can you, to kind of touch back on marketing just for a second, can you define, because this was something that like really opened my eyes whenever you first said it. Can you tell us what the difference between marketing and advertising is?
Sure. Yeah. So I think people get this misconception that marketing is basically advertising and sales. Like you see a commercial on TV, that's marketing. You hear something on the radio or you see a billboard, that's marketing. That's advertising, which is a subset of marketing. But what marketing really is two things. One is it's communication and it's relationship building. So what we just described about a commercial on TV or a radio spot or a billboard, that's advertising, that's communication, that's part of marketing. Marketing is also developing a brand. Marketing is also going to a meeting and going to a coffee and maybe even not talking about what you do. Maybe it's just about hanging out with somebody to develop a relationship, which is definitely not advertising. Advertising is, hey, look at me. This is what I do, or this is my brand, or, Coca-Cola logo on something. That's advertising. But marketing is way deeper. It's building relationships and communicating your message. The thing about, advertising often comes with sales. And, here's something: you're not always selling, but you're always marketing.
Amen.
As soon as I put my t-shirt on, I'm wearing a t-shirt right now that has a brand on it. That means I'm marketing. I'm not going around selling what I'm wearing right now. I'm not trying to get people to come home with me into my office, but I am marketing because I'm representing my brand. I'm communicating that I do this, and I'm building a relationship just by having the brand on. If I'm in the elevator and I'm going to work and I'm wearing a Life West t-shirt or or wherever I used to work at Life West, somebody would say, "Oh, you're that's the chiropractic college." It's like, exactly. I'm wearing my uniform right now, which means I am marketing, which means I am on the clock. I'm not trying to bring this person into the clinic with me, but I'm promoting the fact that we are representing the brand.
Yep. It's that omnipresence type of marketing where it's not just direct sale every time.
Exactly.
Coming for the new patient. And I think that's something, especially at least in my over the last year for me, was about 2 months prior to opening. It was about this time last year, and it was just all shaking hands, grabbing coffee, doing exactly that. And I really didn't try to sell myself at those meetings. It was more so, how can I make the right relationships? Because I don't plan to leave here anytime soon, right? I plan to be here for the long haul. So how can I make these deep connections, knowing that, okay, if I have even a little bit of success with turning on an Instagram or Facebook ad or something like that, we can get more velocity return there. But in regards to marketing and really creating those relationships, it's not a grab coffee, okay, scheduling for a new patient exam, head back, right? That's a terrible way to be marketing, I would think.
Yeah, I think that learning that from you and like learning about brand building and customer experience and all those things like really saved me a lot of grief and a lot of money and a lot of effort, because like a lot of times, like what it seems like, to get people in the door is you have to spend $1,000+ or $10 a day or $100 a week or whatever on paid advertisements for a $21 new patient special, and you just sit in your office, twiddle your thumbs, and while the algorithm turns for you, and you pray that somebody comes in, whenever you've not built like a foundation for your brand. And that is super important, and I think that's like a big misconception. So
yeah, I love that. Not only is that, in my opinion, lazy and boring, But it's also means that you're probably gonna have to keep doing it, because if you're building relationships in the meantime, instead of sitting in your office, that takes longer. It's like farming, right? Farming takes a while. You have to plant something, then you have to water, then you have to nurture it, then you have to wait a season until it grows, and you have to do it again. But you know what? It's also sustainable. And that's what relationship building is, especially in this day and age. People want relationships, and relationships is what leads to business. So if you're doing the social media stuff without the relationship stuff, then it's going to be inefficient. You're going to have to keep doing it. You can do that to get started, to get the initial wave of momentum going. I get that. But if you're not building the relationships, you're going to have to keep doing it. Still, nobody will know who you are. You're probably missing out on a design opportunity. And there's an inefficiency there. So instead, if you get out, you meet everybody, you build a brand, people know you in town, they're going to know you forever.
Right. And it's no longer, in today's day and age, you can no longer just hang your shingle outside your door and people start coming in. That's just not the day and age of business we're in. And so you do have to get active on all platforms, not just social media, but there's definitely plenty of streams, that whether it's a church group or a chamber group or a lot of the things that you've taught us, as well as quite a few of our mentors, is you can't just have one stream of marketing, right? You can't just go to one pond of fish, because eventually there's not going to be any more fish, right? So
that's right.
To kind of wrap things up, we've referenced the E-Myth quite a bit, and I think it definitely is a foundational text for any business owner. But can you explain for the chiropractor what is the E-Myth, like in black and white, and why it's so important to read that book before you start?
Yeah. And if I could just say what we were just talking about with the marketing stuff, that's out of Book Yourself Solid, multiple streams, this and that. So that's number 2 in the sequence. So, I'd be remiss if I'm talking about the E-Myth and we're not talking about Book Yourself Solid. So that's by Michael. Right. And it's phenomenal. And you got to get that if you haven't. So to answer your question, it stands for entrepreneurial myth. E for entrepreneurial. And the myth that's going around the entrepreneurial community, which is entrepreneurial is literally anybody that wants to own a business or own their own business, is that just because you're good at something means that you should do it in business. That's the myth. I'm good at something, so I should do it in business. I'm a good chiropractor, which is what Zach just said. I can hang my shingle up and therefore they will come. That's the myth. E-Myth says, no, that's not true anymore. That might have been true in the past. It's not true anymore. Zach is a good chiropractor, so he can just hang his sign up and he should be good. Myth. The book talks about Sarah the pie maker. She's an excellent pie maker. She makes great pies. You should start a pie store. So she does, and she fails. And that's the whole narrative. And then she learns about the personalities that we talked about, the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur. Then she learns about the big 4: operations, finance, marketing, human resources. Then she learns about systems and having delineated roles for everybody. And then she realizes, wow, it's a lot more than making pies. And I learned through the E-Myth that it's not just about making pies, that I need to learn about entrepreneurship. So let's not fall into the myth and think just because we went to a chiropractic school and I went to a technique seminar and I know how to adjust, that I should be good. That, unfortunately, my friends, is a myth.
Super good.
Amen. And I think that will save you a lot of grief, and it will save you a lot of struggle if you understand that going into it, because you're then prepared, right? You can understand, okay, well, this is what it takes to open a practice. And then and if you are in that in-between stage, to kind of bring everything full circle, if you're in the in-between stage, if you understand that, then you can avoid that myth and you can avoid falling into that trap and doing something that you may or may not regret. But then once you understand, if you are in the in-between, now you understand, okay, I have left and I have right. And I can go this way, I can be the entrepreneur, or I can be the associate. And then you can make a good decision, an informed decision, an educated decision, rather than a hyped up or pressured decision of whatever, right? Where you get roped into a bad associateship where you're underpaid and overworked, or you start a practice where you just spin the wheels and nothing ever becomes productive from it. So that's great.
Well said.
Well, this has been super awesome. Is there any lasting thought or message that you would want to send out to our listeners as we wrap up this podcast?
I think there's lots and lots of resources out there. So find them, take advantage of them. Mentorship is free. Coaching is not.
Mhm.
One, do the other. I don't care. But don't be naive to think that you're alone, because you're not.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Dr. Ankur, thanks so much for coming on the What Now podcast. We really enjoyed it. We know our listeners will too. So if you are enjoying what you're hearing, throw it up on your Instagram story, throw it up on Facebook, share it with a friend. That way you and your colleagues can learn more about how to operate and own a business. Dr. Ankur, thank you so much. We look forward to potentially having you on for a second episode. As I know there's still so much more that we can unpack on all four pillars, on marketing, on advertising, all those types of things. So thank you so much from the bottom of our heart.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, boys, and keep up the great work.
That's
Thanks,
right.
man.
Grab the E-Myth, book yourself solid, and get to it. We'll see you next episode for another rendition of the What Now podcast. Peace.